I'm going to start with this one because this has been going on since the last week of the first half of the season. Are the Tigers okay?
Well, they're not okay right now. They've lost 10 of 11. If you count the All-Star break, they have one win in the past 16 days, and they haven't just been losing. They've been losing in pretty ugly fashion. Lack of hitting. Bullpen has actually been bad going back to the start of June. Starting pitching has not been great. In their series in Pittsburgh, we saw probably the sloppiest play we've seen from the Tigers. So are they okay? I think that's a harder question to answer, right? How do you ever navigate the ups and downs of a major league season? How do you know when to react, when to really kind of freak out about something? I think there's a lot of evidence that suggests the Tigers are a good team, not just the way they started this season, but look at how they ended last year. Look at their run differential, which is still a pretty good predictive stat. I think they're going to be able to snap out of this, but this seems to keep happening night after night, and it does have to stop eventually. So, really bad stretch of baseball for the Tigers. It's got to end soon, or the tenor of these conversations could start changing.
Are we starting to see a Minnesota Tigers collapse of
Whoa.
last year? I know that maybe too soon, but the one thing that you said, you're seeing it in a lot of like different ways. The bullpen, there's different things. To me, it's the hitting. Is there a concern in Detroit about going in? Granted, you go into Pittsburgh, they have good pitching. They have really good pitching, and they got shellacked in the box. To me, is this lack of hitting more of a regression to the mean because of some of these guys who had breakout years? You talk about Spencer Torkelson was going to go to AAA. You talk about Zach McKinstry, everybody, all these storylines that built the Tigers offense early. Now are they coming back down, or is it just a blip in the radar?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some level of regression. I felt as though the Tigers overachieved offensively in the first half. It's not to say they're a bad offense, but they finished the first half as the second best run scoring lineup in the American League. That's a pretty lofty standard. And yeah, Zach McKinstry, Javi Baez, some of those guys, pretty reasonable to expect regression. Now, Spencer Torkelson is actually still raking, but Riley Green, who's carried this lineup, has been in a slump. Kerry Carpenter, who's one of their most important hitters, is on the injured list. Some of these guys you got back from the IL, Matt Vierling, Parker Meadows, you were kind of expecting some contributions. They've been rusty. They've been off to very slow starts. I think that's still going to be a big deal for the Tigers in the second half if McKinstry slumps, if Javi Baez slumps, if couple other guys, even Gleyber Torres, who's been fantastic. Is he going to have a 370, 380 OBP the rest of the way? I don't know. That's a high bar. They need the likes of Meadows, Vierling, some of these other guys to step up and carry some of the load here. Whereas right now, it seems like almost every hitter in this order is going through a little bit of something. Torkelson's been one of the brighter spots, actually, and no one else has stepped up to carry that load. I do think it's fair to worry, how good is this offense? Is this an average offense? I think it's probably realistically more of an average offense than the elite type of offense they played like in the first half.
Okay, let's get to rumors and needs. The trade deadline is coming up, and no better time to struggle and say, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't notice this. I didn't notice we had this problem, and now we need to fill it. Where do you see and where do you hear that the moves are going to come for the Tigers in the next few days?
Yeah, I know we just talked about the offense. My sense right now, after a couple conversations, not a lot of upgrades being going on there. I know people like to mention them in connection with Eugenio Suarez. The fit makes sense on paper. I'm told the Tigers are not closing the door, but not closing the door seems a lot different than what the Mariners are saying, which is that it's their top priority. Now, there's always a little bit of posturing at the trade deadline, but I don't get the sense the Tigers want to get in a bidding war or ship any major prospects at this deadline. They're not going to trade any of their top 100 type guys. Max Clark's going nowhere. Kevin McGonigal's going nowhere. Even if you get into that mid-tier of prospects, look, the Tigers are one of these modern front offices that really likes to hoard their talent, that kind of covets their prospects. I just don't see a big splash. Could they find another hitter, platoon type bat to upgrade? Maybe. My sense is that their early efforts on the trade market center on the relief market. This team clearly needs bullpen help. Since the start of June, their bullpen ERA is over 5. They have the worst swing and miss rate from the bullpen in the entire American League. Now, again, are they going to go get Ryan Helsley? Are they going to go get Emmanuel Clase? I'm not sure. I think Helsley might be on their radar. I'm not expecting an in-division trade for Duran or Clase. This is also the Tigers. They like to be creative. They always seem to have something up their sleeve that no one else is thinking about. I wouldn't be shocked if they identify a couple lesser names to bring in to come help this bullpen. They're already talking about the internal guys they have, some pitchers in AAA they think can help them. They're banking on internal improvements and a couple of the right additions. They hope that can fortify a bullpen that desperately needs help.
Can that bullpen add a certain type of pitcher? So when fans look at it and they go, we get tons of swing and miss out of the bullpen. To me, you're not even like barking down the door of Johan Duran. You're not even looking at guys that don't have a K per 9, over 9 or 10. Is there a certain type of pitcher that matches, like the Mets? The Mets just needed another lefty. They got Gregory Soto. Is there something that matches for that bullpen that would couple well with the Tommy Caneleys of the world?
Yeah, 100%. I think you just nailed it, Eric. It's got to be someone who misses bats, at least in my opinion. You can't have the worst swing and miss rate in the American League from your bullpen. And, there's a correlation between generating swing and miss and winning in the playoffs. So maybe that's not the top end type closer guy, but there are other pitchers out there who miss a lot of bats. Reed Detmers is one name who comes to mind. Like, you can keep going down the list. I think you're right. It needs to be someone who can punch 9, 10, 11 guys per 9 innings. But keep in mind the Tigers also really value pitchers who limit walks. Now, finding a guy who can do both, one of the harder things to do out there. But I think they're going to want a high swing and miss rate without sacrificing a ton of free passes. That's the type of profile I'm looking for.
Right here, Cody. For everybody listening, money. Is there payroll flexibility for the Tigers front office to get these needs done? Whether it's that big arm or, like you said, kind of middle tier arms like a Reed Detmers type of thing. Do they have the cash to do it? Because again, this is a team that offered Alex Bregman, I forget how many $100 million.
180.
Like, is there money?
Yeah, I think I don't think money should be a real concern for the Tigers. They're not close to the luxury tax. They were clearly willing to spend a little more this past offseason. Again, I don't know that they're going to be going after anyone with a huge salary to begin with. I think that has a lot more to do with not being willing to give up their farm system than it does spending money. I don't think cash should be any object for the Tigers at this point.
Now, going into the postseason last year, they had Tarek Skubal, and that's about it. Is there a need to maybe fortify a starting pitching spot to just get the rest of the starting pitchers healthy and ready to go for the postseason? I get it. You're going to have Flaherty. You're going to have Reese Olson. You're going to have Tarek Skubal. I'm not talking about somebody bumping out that main line, but maybe that fourth or fifth starter to fill some of this role until the postseason.
Yeah, the Tigers seem to like what they have internally for the fourth guy, the fifth guy. Cater Montero's actually been okay for them this year. Sawyer Gibson-Long's hurt right now, but they expect him to come back. They signed Jose Urquidy, which is a name a lot of people haven't heard in a while this offseason. He's rehabbing from surgery. They think he's going to come back and pitch in August, September, and be able to start games for them. They just called up Troy Melton, who's a really interesting young guy, can throw 100, gets a ton of swing and miss. He could start. He could move to the pen if need be later in the year. I think that's their plan for the fourth, fifth spots. My personal question, is there merit in going and getting a real guy, like a guy who can start game 2 of a playoff series? I seem to want that more than a lot of people. And I understand, A, starters are expensive. B, in the playoffs, you could argue starting pitching matters less than ever. The Tigers beat the Astros in the playoffs and took the Guardians to 5 last year, based on mixing and matching, based on pitching chaos. You can do that in the postseason, but I'd feel a little bit better having a guy you can really count on, maybe a Merrill Kelly type. I'm told the Tigers don't really love Sandy Alcantara or Zach Gallen, but there's some other pretty quality pitchers out there. As much as Reese Olson, Casey Mize, Jack Flaherty, those are all very capable pitchers, but all of them have been a little bit up and down. I don't know that you're trotting any of them out there for game 2 of the playoffs in Yankee Stadium and thinking, okay, these guys can go 7 scoreless. Maybe you're not feeling that way with a Merrill Kelly type either. But I personally think there's some room to upgrade the rotation, but I'm told the Tigers don't necessarily view that as a real priority.
What is the style of Scott Harris now, getting to know him the last few years? He's running the front office for the Tigers. He has done a really nice job the last few years. This team had a magical run last year. They're great up into the last couple weeks this year. What is his style as far as making moves?
Yeah, pragmatic is always the word that seems to come up around Scott Harris. Very much, I think, a reflection of like the modern executive, right? He's young, he's polished, but he likes his prospects. He believes in calculated risk, finding value on the margins. Not necessarily a guy who's going to go chase stars, chase big names. They did go after Bregman harder than a lot of people, myself included, thought they would this offseason based on other history. But I don't think Scott Harris is the type of GM who actually sees, not that he doesn't see value in the trade deadline, but it's easy for us in the media, for other teams out there to maybe overrate what you can do at the trade deadline. At the end of the day, you're getting, I think this is how the Tigers front office views it. You're getting rentals. You are trading parts of your future for rental type players who may or may not perform in a 2-month window for you. And then in the volatility of the postseason. So yeah, when you think Scott Harris, when you think the Tigers, this is very much a big brain organization now. They operate a little more like the Rays or maybe the Astros of old. The Astros of old did make some aggressive moves at the deadline, but I don't think that swashbuckling aggressive style at all describes the Tigers.
Cody, one more for you. Do you think that the lack of competition right now in the division affects things at all for this team? Gives a little bit of complacency to the front office and really ownership who controls all of the decision makings? Or do you think they're very aware that they could do damage in the playoffs? The American League in general has not been as strong in my mind as it usually is for this season and last season now.
Yeah, I think you may be onto something there, right? This is not an American League with a superpower. The Tigers have been playing very bad baseball as of late, but who's going to beat them in the playoffs? I mean, there's certainly teams who could, but I don't know that there's anyone the Tigers are necessarily fearing right now. And they've lost 10 of 11, and they still lead the AL Central by 8 games. Now, they were up by 15 games not all that long ago. Suddenly, the Guardians are just close enough to be within shouting distance again. But I think maybe that plays a role. I do wonder, would the calculus be any different if the Tigers were only up by 1 or 2 games in their division? There's a real thought that maybe there's more value in acquiring players to get you to the playoffs. Because once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. The Tigers, it would take a pretty historic collapse at this point to miss the postseason. I think they still feel good about the core group they have stacking up against anyone else in the American League. So a little bit of an interesting discussion there. I don't think I'd call it complacency, but I don't think that, when you look and you're up 8 games in the standings, that's definitely not making anyone more urgent in that front office.